I have to ask you, why have we chosen France today?
Probably a really good move if you want to do natural hydrogen exploration in Western Europe.
What is this about? What's going on in Lorraine?
There's so much more potential. Some might even say that there's discovery made in Lorraine.
Is it a surprise to you, or is it something predictable which was going to happen? Welcome back to the Natural Hydrogen Investment Podcast, where we help you explore this evolving opportunity in a nascent industry. I'm Anthony Muhi, chemical engineer and natural hydrogen enthusiast.
And I'm Morten Stahl, specialized investor and founder of Natural Hydrogen Ventures.
Every 2 weeks, we give you insights and intel on what's happening in the space, and sometimes we do some interviews with very interesting leaders. Remember, you can find the full Natural Hydrogen Investor Report 2025 on our website, nath2investing.com. Just sign up on our form, and you'll also be signed up for a bi-weekly newsletter, which I love writing, and Morten loves adding information to make the best value package out there, which you can get for natural hydrogen. Remember, if you are on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, subscribe, share with your friends, share with your colleagues. If you are on YouTube actually watching us, please like and subscribe, and you can share with your friends. In this episode, we are going to continue the Natural Hydrogen Nations mini-series. And this time, we are actually quite close to both of our countries, which is in France. This episode is the French Revolution. It's natural hydrogen related, don't worry, it's not history. So we are going to cover the companies in France. We're going to talk about why France is interesting, legislation, and more importantly, what's next for the space and what's next for this country in the natural hydrogen industry. Oh, also, we're going to talk about, just mention briefly, the H-NAT event, which is bringing people together in natural hydrogen. So, Morten, as always, I have to ask you, why have we chosen France today?
Well, this is because in many ways, France were where much of this began. I am quite sure, sorry, South Australia, if I'm wrong, but I think the first place in the world where you could get an actual natural hydrogen license, at least the first, for sure, the first in Europe, was in France, where they decided to change the mining code to allow for natural hydrogen exploration, which I mention as often as possible, probably a really good move if you want to do natural hydrogen exploration in Western Europe, where oil and gas onshore is banned for environmental reasons. Because if you open onshore oil and gas laws again, then a lot of people would have opinions. But mining was a no problem in France, and now you can get a license. It's also France where you have a lot of the first, scientists working with this, Isabelle Moretti, Alan Prinshofer, working on this. So many people participated in building the natural hydrogen industry, but France and French scientists has played a crucial role.
Fantastic. And to me, it's a bit of a surprise, to be honest, to me, that France is looking to drill now for natural hydrogen. So it seems to be moving forward with one of the companies we will mention further ahead. Is it a surprise to you you've been living here in Europe longer, or is it something predictable which was going to happen?
No, I think I don't think that anyone would think it's to be not true that things is a bit slower with bigger projects and permissions to do stuff in Europe. But it was in some way a surprise that drilling is now planned in France. You could say already, and I'm doing this because in US they've drilled probably more than 10 wells, 2 in Australia. So it's not that it's too soon, you could say, but there's some interesting information. But I'll share that when we get to the companies, I think.
Okay, fantastic. And before we list the companies, the Lorraine discovery, I think a lot of natural hydrogen in France, it's surrounded by this, the Lorraine discovery, and the huge news we got in 2023, and we got recent news, I think end of 2024 or start of 2025. What is this about? What's going on in Lorraine?
Well, I think it's something got out of hand with the Lorraine discovery. While I do love the interest it brought to the industry, I think everyone involved, including the company that has applied for the license in this area, says this is not what we tried to say. Because what happened was that some measurements were made. Hydrogen dissolved in water were measured at one level, and then it was assumed that if it continues to grow, it more and more will be dissolved. X amount down, meters down, it will be even more. And then calculated if there's so much water, there'll be so much hydrogen. Um, and I think this is not a given. We haven't drilled and tested it, and there's not a resource estimate as you would see some of the other companies had, and it's not a confirmed resource at all. So I think it was a bit getting too much ahead of themselves. And as we'll see later, while there's definitely potential in this area, Lorraine, much of the natural hydrogen exploration in France are actually concentrated further south.
Maybe near the border with Spain?
Near the border with Spain, some of it, there's the Pyrenees plays a role, where it's very, very interesting, really. But as in the broader world of natural hydrogen, there's different opportunities. And what Lorraine has going is that there's maybe some organic shales, coal bed that could produce some hydrogen. Maybe it could be even further down. I don't know. We don't know. But hopefully, this is what drilling there, quite a
Yes.
deep well, will actually fix. Um, but what would be really interesting with Lorraine is it's close to heavy energy users. You have steel plants in France and Germany. So, from a market perspective, which means nothing if you don't find any hydrogen, but if you did, that's really interesting, no doubt.
Yeah, and I just to recap, in case anybody is not following it, one of the companies we'll cover today, they are going to do this exploration. They have announced a 15 million exploration budget. So very interesting. Morten will tell us more.
Yeah.
And just to talk about something you mentioned just now, which is the way that the scientists, they gave some results, and then the media or the leaders in the executives took it and blew it up into something which is not. I think about this whenever I look at AI right now, because when you get the scientists, they say, well, we may make some big progress in the next few months with AI. And then Sam Altman or Elon Musk, they come out and they say, within the next 6 months, we'll have AI will take over humanity and they will be smarter than any human alive. And I'm just wondering how the scientists feel when that happens. It's probably like, no, that's not what I said.
Well, I haven't spoken directly with the guys, doing the testing, but it's an obvious thing in the industry. Whenever we meet, no one takes this serious. I think my understanding is that something happened with some journalists, who really thought this was interesting, and then took some freedoms, extrapolating a lot. But it doesn't change that there's potential, but it looks like there's so much more potential. Some might even say that there's discovery made in Lorraine, and this is not the case.
Good
Because
to
if there
know.
were,
Okay.
this industry would look totally different. The share prices of the companies we'll be discussing would look much, much, better, higher. We're not
Yeah.
there yet.
Yeah. And maybe we would have a gold plated background.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Everyone will be watching our, YouTube videos because, they told us about natural hydrogen and now it's all the rage. I'm sure it will be, but we're not there yet.
Talking of backgrounds, Morten, before we begin, I have a mascot behind me, this duck with a frog on top. I see you have a mascot of a dog.
I do.
Is it a dog?
And people who knows me well will know that I'm not really a dog or animal guy, at all. I have enough kids to take care of. But this is from Financial Times weekend How to Spend It magazine. I ordered the real poster, and it's a dog looking, a bit British, maybe. Sorry, English guys, if you disagree. Holding newspaper, Financial Times, and being this very nerdy guy, one of my favorite thing in the world is Financial Times newspaper. And I do read it. And people ask, do you really read it? Physical newspaper. And I do. Because everything else is on, computer. Anthony, we meet only online, except a few times. Everything. If I was reading my news on the screen too, I would just be, already living in Mark Zuckerberg's, Mark's. Let's just call him Mark. His Meta universe, So this is real life. And it's much better, when I don't want to see my kids, I can just do like this instead of just looking at a screen. Oh, finally, you can hear I love Financial Times. But when I tell my wife why it's important that I have the time to read the newspaper, is because this is actually where I read the first article on natural hydrogen more than 3 years ago. This was a time in life where I was investing in green energy in general, but I sadly can't say that this was something that's what was on my radar already. You know, but I read the article on natural hydrogen, on gold hydrogen working in South Australia, and then the rest is history. I almost immediately stopped doing anything else. But so, and I tell my wife, imagine if I didn't read that newspaper that day. So I like it, and this is why I want to do something more personal with my background. So I bought this.
Thanks for sharing that with us. And Financial Times, they don't support us, by the way. This is not a very,
Yes, at least. But
very
please call.
disguised, very disguised ad. No, there's no ad here. Very interesting. Watson, we have our viewers are probably waiting for the companies now. So
Of course. Yeah,
let me stop distracting you and tell me more about the first company, which is very hard to pronounce for both of us. FDE.
exactly. The ticker is FDE, and let's stick with that because, sorry, French language, I'll be murdering you a lot, but I'll try to stay out of it. You'll know what I mean anyway. Um, FDE, it's a public traded company, and it's actually one of only two, you could say 1.01 company doing natural hydrogen. And this, for this reason, this could be a really short episode because there are no other public traded companies. Different from Canada and Australia, US to some degree, there is not the same tradition for early stage resource companies to list in Europe. Back in the days, you could do it in London, but that's still the case. But you don't see as many. So the companies working in France are primarily private, and we will touch on a few of them later. But FDE is the company that have applied for a natural hydrogen exploration license in this area of northern France, Lorraine. But interestingly enough, it seems they got the permission to drill before actually getting the license granted. This is, bureaucracy for you when it works really well. They will get it anytime soon, maybe when this video is out. So the essence is that they have planned to drill in this area for coal bed methane, which is what this company does, finding methane as fossil fuel, sadly, but important for energy security, drilling for that, but also drilling a 4,000-meter deep well to test for natural hydrogen. And this is interesting for many ways. It's soon. They expect to do it within the next 6 months. It's the deepest well by far drilled for natural hydrogen. What is officially known from gold hydrogen in Australia, Hytera in the US, that is less than 2,000 meters. So we will really see some new interesting information. And at the same time, from an investor perspective, FDE offers you something interesting. It's profitable. It's a company that makes money, because it has other means of doing this. It sells a lot of clean electricity, owns wind and solar, or at least solar, has heat, sells heat, has green hydrogen projects in Norway, actually recently acquired. So it's kind of a full and bigger energy company. Also has some work on biogas and how to transport and sell carbon dioxide. So quite an interesting company, but it's not included in our net H2 index because the exposure to natural hydrogen is very small compared to the rest of the business. But obviously this could change. I know that the leadership of this company is looking into to natural hydrogen, and they are at some of the same conferences, so they're interested, definitely. No doubt about it. But all this also means that it is a bigger company than what we're normally looking at. It's a 170 million euro market cap. So it's twice as big as Gold Hydrogen, the biggest company in market cap in the public traded companies. So interesting company, but definitely mostly interesting because they will be drilling this deep well. And because it's a public company, information will be out, hopefully.
Yeah. I just wanted to mention that when I posted on on our social media about FDE's announcement in drilling. I think it's the biggest thing we've ever posted. Lots of people came, lots of people interested in this news. It got shared, I don't know, 30 times, over 400 reactions to it. So I think people are excited about this news, and it seems to me that there's going to be many people watching, and many could be a lot of price difference once the results come out. So it's something to watch. I think, as always, not financial advice, but
But definitely, but interesting. It will be interesting to follow. What happens if there's a good news out of Europe? We tracked it earlier, seeing that if there's a good news out of US, it affects mostly the US and then Canadian companies, then Australian companies. Investors, it seems, sometimes assuming that this is if there's something working in this area, it can be too far away. I don't think you can make that conclusion, but definitely good news and bad news tend to lift and sink all boats. But what's interesting for in Europe, in France, is that it could be expected that the business case for natural hydrogen might be a bit better in Europe as energy is more expensive. If
but
you,
yes,
if you want to compare, the true potential with natural hydrogen is that it could potentially compete with fossil fuels. And it's just much easier to compete with, let's say, natural gas in Europe because the price, I think it's 3 or 4 times higher very often than it is in the US. So there's less of a price gap to bridge. Um, but of what works against it is the time it takes to actually be allowed to do it. Will the public be okay with drilling? And I forgot to mention, France has been thinking about this and have actually required any discovery of natural hydrogen that includes methane or natural gas, then it has to be re-injected so that it will actually be producing only clean hydrogen. This is a really good rule for European countries, European populations, because you said no to onshore oil and gas drilling, and this should not open a back door to do it anyway. It makes sense. But tell this to Australian and US drillers, they look like they've seen a ghost. What? Will you have to re-inject valuable gas? Yeah, that's how it is. Will be in France at least. So different countries, different rules. It can all be regulated so it fits with the local market. But back to the companies. We will now quickly touch on the company that is zero point 0.0 something. And that is actually the very big energy company, Engie. Engie is a listed company. It has a market cap of more than 40 billion euros. And we don't track it. We don't mention it because the actual exposure to natural hydrogen in Engie through their subsidiary Storengy is just minuscule. It's nothing. But Storengy has some permits in Morocco, and it has some exploration permits in a joint venture with 45-8 Energy in France. So it's a thing. They have exposure. But to believe that any natural hydrogen discovery would move the stock price of Engie is hard to believe. So that's why we don't discuss this normally. But 45-8 Energy is interesting to discuss. It is like all the companies we're going to mention from now on in France. It's a private company. So there's a lot of things we don't know. But 45-8 was one of the early companies doing this, doing hydrogen exploration, but also doing helium exploration. And if I should describe 45-8, it's probably mostly helium, which made great sense. They have made a discovery in Europe. They might soon be producing commercially. And it makes money. Good. They've developed some specific technologies for it as well. But they do natural hydrogen as well. They have joint venture in the US with H2AU of the UK. And then they have 2 licenses in southern France. One in the kind of eastern part near the coast, western part near the Atlantic coast, and in the eastern part of what would be the Pyrenees, the mountain hills
yes.
between France and Spain. And without deep diving in geology, my understanding is that what this area in France has going for it is that it's very much younger rock. So maybe there is still a reaction going, water, iron, creating hydrogen. Again, let's not dive into it, but at least it offers something different than, let's say, the iron-water reaction may be happening in the mid-continental rift. According to PitchBook, 45.8 has raised 28.5 million euros. I'm not sure that these numbers are always correct, but I guess it gives you a feeling that it's kind of a big company. It would be valued probably above a bit above gold hydrogen if it were a listed company. Obviously, a lot of value being put on the helium technology and the helium work they're doing in France and Germany, no doubt.
And something which I remember meeting the CEO of 45.8 Energy, very pleasant fellow at HNAT. And I remember that at HNAT last year in 2024, I realized that this is a big French contingent in natural hydrogen. It's probably the biggest alongside Australia and the US. Why is this? Because this is also one of the big reasons we have France as one of our mini series entrants, which is the Natural Hydrogen Nations mini series. Why does it have such a big contingent?
Well, as I said in the beginning, there's just, for some reason, some French guys started looking into this. There's been a lot of scientists looking into this for a long time. I think my understanding is that the origin of the idea of looking for subcircular depressions, where hydrogen seeps, a lot of stuff coming out of France on this. Um, and for this reason, they have the opportunity to build on that advantage. They are the creator of the H-NAT conference, the biggest conference by far in this industry. It seems to be now decided that it will be in Paris each year, but a great conference. At maybe good time to mention that while this conference has been focused very much on the scientific part of it, because this is where it all started. Last year, they had some investor subjects on a panel where I was lucky to be moderating it. And now this year, we have teamed up with them as co-organizers of a whole investor day at HNAT. So we will be supporting, telling the world about this event. And I'll be moderating a few of the panels where we will also see a pitch event from different companies, both France and international companies.
Yes.
You will
And it's
definitely hear more of this, audience. Anthony and I, mostly Anthony, will make sure that you won't miss it.
And very important that internal note, which I'm saying out loud because it's interesting to share. Internal note: we have to release this episode before then, otherwise this announcement will come a bit late. Sadly.
Exactly.
So let's make sure to release this episode early. See you at HNAT. Back to you, Morten.
Yeah, I think we have two more private companies to cover. They are likely a few more, but they're not quite official yet about this, and we respect their privacy. So only talk about companies that have publicly announced that they have applied for a license or been granted a license. There's the first company to get a permit to explore in France. That's a company called Turensis that has, again, in southern part of France, part of the, downhill Pyrenees, a 225 square kilometers license. They got this license in December 2023, and which is good. And I understand they have them for at least 5 years. But it just tells you something about the time it takes to do stuff in Europe that they haven't drilled yet.
Almost 2
We'll
years later.
probably
Right?
see the same in Australia for different reasons, but again, it takes time. You need to get a permit. It's likely also quite more expensive to drill in France. Much more, I would expect you could rule of thumb 5 to 10 times more expensive to do it in France than in the US. But as is a private company, we don't know what their plans are and what they're planning to do. So that's actually what there's to say about. I know the team, clever guys, but we'll just be waiting for them to make their plans be known. The same could be said about I think what might be the recently newcomer to this French industry is Mansell 8. They have what seems to be a license in southern France, Pyrenees as well, 700 square kilometers. According to PitchBook, they raised 3.4 million euros recently, and the website says they have applied for a license other places in Europe, maybe understand. So definitely, I think what could generally be said that these companies, as I know them, they're heavy on science. Many of the companies are founded by, some borderline, close to being scientists. So they should know what they are doing. And again, this is probably because there's so much knowledge in French universities about this. So you could probably go out and build 10 more French private companies, picking some people from universities who don't yet work in a private company doing natural hydrogen.
Right. And something which I would like to ask our audience, which normally I don't do these types of things, but it would be nice to see if you want to suggest a country in the comments, please do so. Leave a comment below saying, "Oh, I want one of these countries." We have recorded for this mini series until now uh, Australia, France, Canada, and the US is a no-brainer. But if you have a country which you want to share, which you want us to feature and give more information on, please talk about it in the comments, and we will give it a thought, and we will research what we can find.
Definitely, yeah. I think it'll be interesting to see where do we have a country with more than one company operating, but
That,
we
that's it.
expect that to grow soon.
That's
Yeah,
a crucial
yeah.
requirement, of course. We can't do a 5 minute video.
Maybe we can collect some of them, and then there's the company, the four main countries, and then the rest of the world. There are things going on in Morocco. It seems,
Yes,
uh, GTEC and Sound Energy seems to be doing something. I just mentioned that NG's subsidiary have some permits, but it's not something that we've deep dived on.
at some point I want to do the Latin American one. It would be nice, or
Yeah.
South America would be nice. All right, so I think that is pretty much it. Morten did warn it was going to be a shorter episode. Do you have anything more to add about France?
Yeah, I think like, to stick with tradition, let's compare France to US.
That's
As
good.
again, full disclaimer, we're actually not saying which companies might be the best investment to do. So when we compare France with US, it's which country will have the first initial success with natural hydrogen. And again, I would say for the normal reasons, US seems to be in the lead. Have already drilled more wells. It's easier to get going. France is far ahead in European terms because you can get a license, but it takes more than 18 months to get it from when you apply. I don't know what they spent that time doing, but you could just be much quicker going in the US. You get a smaller chunk of acreage. You're right. You have to ask the landowners, and also crucially, it's so much cheaper to drill. Exactly why that is, I can't say for sure, but it might be the fact that since oil and gas onshore is banned in Europe, there's simply not a big supply of rigs that can drill that deep. And this is what really works in the US. So probably, as I said earlier, more than 5 times cheaper to do in the US. So that is, I think it will be much, much easier for any private or public French company to get financing to do whatever they want to do if someone proves natural hydrogen somewhere else in a shallower or cheaper well. It's just if you need 5, 10, 20 million euros to do what you want to do drilling wise in Europe, it will likely be easier to do if someone else had made a discovery. So it seems more plausible that you will have success.
Yeah,
So I
this
think,
is good
yeah,
advice.
US is still in front, but no doubt there's a reason why the countries we're covering is US, Canada, France, Australia, because this is where action is going on. This is where you have a strong knowledge base. Based on knowledge, I think France and US is close, but you do have, as we covered, a lot of, more money being put into USGS work, Department of Energy work in the US, or at least has been recently. But there's just so much knowledge in the French universities regarding this that really means something to build the ecosystem.
We hope you've enjoyed the mini series until now. It's been fun to record. It's a bit of a standalone thing going on, so we hope you enjoyed it. Let us know if you did. Remember, you can find the full 2025 Natural Hydrogen Investor Report on our website. You can subscribe, and this will subscribe you to our bi-weekly newsletter. It's really packed full of information and intel. And we have the share a lot about our YouTube updates. So whenever we post something on YouTube, the same day it goes out on our newsletter. So you will know very soon about it. Remember, if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe, like, share with your colleagues. And if you're listening to it on Apple or Spotify, go ahead and subscribe. You'll get a very early alert when it comes out, which is an advantage. You'll be ahead of anybody else for a few hours. Uh, Besides that, I think that's all for today. Thank you for watching, and remember to leave any comments suggesting countries we should look at or individual companies we can group together and talk about as well. Thank you, Morten, for
Thank you,
all the
Anthony.
info. Yeah, for all the information. See you at HNAT.
See you.